This video brought to you by Trip C Productions.
I don't know if there's anybody who's not having a good time, but I haven't met them. Everybody that's told me they've enjoyed the classes they've had, they've learned a lot, and it's making them feel inspired and activated for the future. So that is exactly what we wanted, and I'm really happy about that. So I just have one announcement, is the campaign management class. I'm told there was some consideration of doing 101 and 102 today or something, but it's as it is in the schedule. We're doing the two campaign management 201 classes today, so if you thought otherwise, that's not what's happening. I'm not sure anybody was even worried about that. But our keynote speaker this morning is my friend Marc Emery. Might not need an introduction, but I'll just say I've known Marc for about 2 decades, and it's been an inspiration and an honor to be his friend and his ally, and someone I would say who's more persistent and more motivated in this cause than anybody else that I've ever met. Certainly someone that had a huge influence on our movement here in Canada and around the world. And just got back from Europe where he was speaking in a number of places and able to spread our message of hope and freedom for marijuana all around the planet. And someone who's transformed Vancouver in some very real ways. This city would be very, very different if Marc Emery had not decided to come to Vancouver back in the early 90s. And so without any further introduction, I bring you Marc Emery.
I've only got half an hour, which is really just a preamble to my speech. But I did want to take... can you hear me okay? Yeah. I did want to tell you a story about Dana, though, because nobody would know this but me. And I'm not sure he wants me to tell you. But he does know me exactly 20 years. In fact, it was 20 years ago this month where he started working at my original location, Hemp BC, at 324 West Hastings. That was what we started back 20 years ago. And Dana was the worst retail employee I've ever seen. He was absolutely terrible. He would say, "Martin, I'm not good at this. I can't sell pipes and bongs and stuff." And I had one of these wonderful deadheads working for me who loved all that sort of stuff. And we're great. And I hired Dana because he was such a knowledgeable person. I figured, you should work for us because you know so much about. He had this wonderful little pamphlet on 4 pages called "The History of Cannabis Prohibition in Canada," which has formed the basis probably for this wonderful comic book that he's about to publish in the months ahead. But, and I thought it was the most brilliantly read thing about Canadian prohibition I had ever read. So I said, "You should work with us." So I joined my retail store. He wasn't really doing anything else, but he had just gotten through an English degree, and he really had a future in journalism or some kind of publishing venture. And so he admitted he was terrible at selling pipes and bongs, and that please could I find him something else to do. And one day while I was typing up the Marijuana and Hemp newsletter, I got what I thought was carpal tunnel syndrome, and my wrist hurt. And I thought, God damn it, 32 pages, I'm pounding away, and I could type with one finger, unpacking technique. I'm really good at it. According to the prison I was just at, I did 65 words a minute that way. I know that because I applied for a clerk job in the prison, and I passed that test. But then I realized, no, I'm getting off the tangent. I was going to say they wanted me to work 8 hours a day for like $2 a day or something like that. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'd rather learn bass guitar, so that's what I went and did. Which turns out to be a way better idea. So one day and Dana walks right by me, and it immediately occurs to me, he hates working at that counter, but he's great at writing stuff. So I got up and I said, Dana, I'm not doing this anymore. You're going to be this editor. You do this from now on. And he goes, really? And I said, yeah, you do it. I said, my wrist hurts. I just don't want to do it anymore. Right? And then his face lit up. And then they spent 10 years as editor of Cannabis Culture magazine. Making it one of the greatest magazines of our movement I thought we have ever had. It never sold out. It was a really principled, beautiful magazine. I edited it myself for 4 years after he did it for 10 years. And that's maybe one of the few things I actually missed from going to prison, because prison had 2 consequences that I kind of regret. it got me to have to close up shop on Canada's Culture magazine. Now that might have been fortuitous. It always lost money after we couldn't put the seed catalog in it. I have no idea if this is really what my speech should be, but I just tell you stuff. Because these are some things I've wanted to say, but no one's ever asked. Everybody always asks, tell me how prison was. Listen, prison was fine. I was very much in the present tense during prison. I'm very much in the now wherever I am and whatever I'm doing. I've always been doing it like that, and that's always fun. I don't think about the past. In fact, I'm so lucky because I have no trauma to report from prison. Right. Some people have said, oh, you're going to feel it later on. I said, no, I don't think so. I hardly remember it now. It was 4.5 years, and all the inmates were really nice to me everywhere I went. The guards watched my movies. They could get access to the internet while they worked. So as soon as they heard about me, they watched all the movies I was in, TV shows. I mean, they were very knowledgeable about me and my stuff eventually. They would want to talk about it. And all the inmates were great to me, so I don't have any trauma. So this whole recent 4.5 years in U.S. federal prisons, and there were some very arduous days. Whenever I got shipped around to a new prison, or even when I was brought home, that was a trippy day, getting home that day. Because all day long from 3:30 in the morning to 4:20, by the way, exactly 4:20. I was released through that door at 4:20. That is the strangest thing.
Yeah.
When I got to Windsor and I was unshackled, it was 4:17, and they had a brief speech they wanted to give me, and then they just pointed to that door. That's your door. That's your door. That's so strange, right? And I've been shackled in leg irons and handcuffs and a chain around my waist. And you have to do everything like that. You have to go to the bathroom, you have to drink this bottle of water, and you have to eat this terrible lunch they give you, all in the same position. And then I'm unshackled, and they point to the door, and I go through that door, and it's like going from, in The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy goes from black and white into color. It was so like that. I even remember feeling that way, because the room I'm in when I'm unchained is gray and white and dark and kind of like, you know, very monochromatic. And then I go out and boom, and it's sunny as all get out in Windsor, and people blow immediately big clouds of smoke. That is the first smell I got to in Canada. And that stunned me because I thought, because I had no idea what to really expect. I was so anxious to go through that door. Because, you know, I wouldn't say I waited 4.5 years for it, but now it was here. It was a pretty nice door to see, right? And so I went through, and the sun just hit me like it was brilliantly sunny. 20-some-odd TV cameras, and then blowing smoke all, and I was really disoriented. That's the only time I could. And then Jodie's arm came out and pulled me through the crowd to a podium there a couple months away. And that to me was like, and I quickly adjusted to it, but that's got to be one of the most amazing few seconds of my life ever, that transformation from being black and white prisoner in chains all the time or behind a barbed wire fence, boom, and the immediate smell of freedom too. I always say that, cannabis smells like freedom for a very good reason, right? Because I just got back from Europe, and so when people say welcome back, I'm thinking welcome back from Europe. It's a lot more fun to say it's good to be back than it was, say, regarding prison. So I went and talked to many people in all sorts of different cities, and I want to tell you this: there is an intellectual wave in favor of legalization covering the globe right now. And there's two people. Will exempt my own influence. I like to think, I've been a superhero in my own movie for a long time. I get lots of plaudits and things said about me, so we can sort of go by my contributions. But there's two people here today who are the most inspiring people on earth, right, in a way, to me and to so many others. And that's Mason Tvert, who legalized, who ran SAFER in Colorado. And I give credit for legalizing it, and he'll probably say there's tons of others. And of course there were lots of others. But Mason had a plan. When he got marijuana the lowest possible priority in Denver in 2006, he had a plan. He was so methodical getting to 2012. And he was a patient genius who knew exactly how to get things done in the right way. That is the best legalization or legislation in the world that gets the closest to what we want. People can grow their own, and it's legal to buy it, sell it, possess it, carry it around, and I dare say the state isn't making many arrests of people growing more than 6 plants. I got to figure they're not exactly going door to door, looking if you've got 8 or 10 or 12, right? So that has been so inspiring to everyone around the world. Just like getting 220,000 signatures in British Columbia. And you know what? That's a real leap of faith and a real show of heart to get 220,000 signatures, because our legislation in British Columbia is so flawed that even if you get it on the ballot and people vote for it, they don't even have to enact it in their legislature. What arrogance to design legislation that says, you know, 400,000 people went to the effort in 90 days to get this on the ballot, and the people approved it, but you're not even obligated to accept it. But those are wonderful, inspiring things that are having an impact on people all over. So when I went to Spain, I was shocked. Spain has really moved forward in the last few years. In Barcelona alone, which is a wonderful city you should go to, they have over 200 clubs selling marijuana to anybody who's a Spanish citizen. You just have to sign up as a member. They have a kind of a tricky sort of business. They don't actually exchange money for the weed. What you do is you put money in an account. So I give them, say, 100 euros, and they put 100 euros under my name. And then anytime I go get something, whether a coffee, food, or marijuana, it's just deducted from my account in a bookkeeping transaction, but there's no cash changing, right? And they have 200 of these in Barcelona. There were 22 in Madrid. There was a beautiful new one that cost 3 million euros to build in San Sebastian, this beautiful oceanside city where I spoke at a hemp expo in the room next door. And the Strain Hunters Club is run by Aryan of Greenhouse Seeds, and he spent 3 million euros, which is $4,500 Canadian, sorry, $4.5 million Canadian, for one in Barcelona and one in San Sebastian, and they're just gorgeous. There's the state of the art. If you wanted to know what a real smoking lounge looks like, they are beautiful, and I'm very envious of them that they have that kind of money to invest in those things. And it's still a risk too, because there's nothing in law that allows people to sell or buy or do anything in Spain. And then we went to Ireland, and I spoke at the 3 universities in Ireland, and the Irish used to get all their hash. In fact, most of Europe has never really smoked a lot of bud. That's one thing you'll learn when you go to Europe is people have that obnoxious habit that still persists, but less so, of mixing hash with tobacco and then not telling me. Yeah. Right? And then the Canadian guy, yes, we've got to remember. Because they were always shocked, and I said, you know, in Canada, we never do that. No. We never, ever do that. In 20 years, I've had it 3 times maybe, someone passed me a joint that had tobacco in it. And in Europe, it happens everywhere, but less so now, because what happens is they used to buy hash from either Amsterdam or Morocco, and that's all changing radically. Ireland is growing a lot of its own pot, and that's the first time in 5 years they've really grown a lot of it. They have seed companies there in Ireland producing seeds as well as distributing seeds. They have grow shops. They're politically organized. The Students for a Sensible Drug Policy were very organized in the universities. I toured Ireland with a fellow named Dr. Joe Golau. He's the person in Portugal responsible for their decriminalization. He was responsible for bringing it into effect in 2000. He's still in charge of it, and he's on the European Commission for the Reform of Drugs, an important European group that he's with. I don't actually know how it's said particularly, but I was with him for 3 days, and he was a wonderful person, and he was explaining to me how their decriminalization was going and how they get people coming from all over the United States and around the world to come and see how their example is working. And so we toured together, and he was very impressed. He doesn't smoke pot, but the Irish were articulate, and we got on talk shows, and they have the same hysterical, crazy people against marijuana there that we have here. Nothing makes sense, and they're factual arguments. You know, everything they claim that prohibition does, in fact, causes the problem that they want to solve. So the Irish have very similar problems, but here's this. Their marijuana is like 300 to 400 euros an ounce, which is the equivalent of, say, $450 to $600 an ounce. Oh. And it was the same in Scotland and England, too. Things are very expensive there, but that's because people have turned away from hashish completely, and now they're both growing a lot of their own pot because it's just coming on stream and demand is still huge. The price is high, but it's coming down. And in Scotland and Manchester and London, where I spoke at universities there, they are all organized into what they call cannabis social clubs, where they're all organizing and forming co-ops to grow marijuana to be sold at cost price to all their members. And they're doing this all across the UK and Ireland, in Northern Ireland and Scotland, Wales, England. So I was really impressed. There was lots of progress, that all the universities are very engaged in getting people politically motivated. And so I'm very optimistic because I think the Colorado example, Sensible BC's example, and Portugal's decriminalization, and Uruguay, going to be selling marijuana for $1 a gram, which to some degree is problematic, but that's another story. All these things are going on, and other people from other governments are going and looking at all these examples, because everybody knows it's coming to them. There is no country on earth that doesn't know somewhere down the line we're going to have to make accommodation to normalize marijuana. It's coming. In fact, it's coming very soon to Canada. Because I'm going to devote most of the next 12 months to making sure we have a Liberal majority government next year. If there's a compelling reason to support another party in the election to achieve the goals that we all seek, I welcome that argument. But to me, there's obviously not one. It's clear that if we fragment our support as a culture and as a nation over 4 different political parties, we could well end up with Stephen Harper once again.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And I think, much as I sometimes admire Thomas Mulcair, there's absolutely no way we as a culture should support the NDP or any other party when we have the first time in history someone who's on record, who's doubled down on it. He's repeated it dozens and dozens of times, that he wants to see full legalization. And the Liberal Party policy is to expunge all the criminal records of the over 2 million people in Canada that have convictions. That's not even on the table anywhere else on earth, right? So that is something. We have never in 50 years had a leader who promised to go into the next election with a platform of full legalization. So to me, our job is clear. We have to convince as many people, our parents, our friends, as possible to vote right across the board everywhere in Canada for the Liberal Party candidate, of which I do hope my wife Jody is one for Vancouver East. Yeah. But even if she's not, I will be campaigning for whoever the candidate is in Vancouver East, despite the fact that I thought Libby Davies, and still think Libby Davies, is the most wonderful person, a lovely person. And if she weren't whipped by her leader into never mentioning the word legalization any longer, and if she wasn't whipped into not being able to talk about the Palestinians and what's going on there and other things, what's the point of being a veteran MP for 17 years is my feeling, if you get told what to think, say, and do. What is it about Canadian democracy I'm missing? Now, people said, oh, well, Trudeau will do the same thing. I said, yeah, but Jody's not obsessed with a cabinet position, so she doesn't care. She's such a prickly, often irritable person. If somebody told her what to say, she'd just tell them what she thought and let's go, go her own way. She's not going to bend on her principles for anything, And so that's the kind of spirit I think you need. Someone who says, I don't want to change. I don't want to compromise. I want to get this nomination. I want to represent our people. I want to represent all the people, but I don't want someone telling me what to do, right? And I think at least you need to start out feeling that way before you get whipped into conformity and going along with things. Because the other parties now, you'll notice, never mention legalization. They don't use that word because they think that of that as a Liberal Party campaign term. So no other party mentions it now. I haven't even heard Elizabeth May speak at length about it. And she's also a wonderful person who's been so helpful to me. But they're starting to get cowed because they're starting to take our issue and make it very partisan. And we, in some ways, have to reward the one party that's willing to take our issue. I mean, they've even got a guy in charge of the marijuana file. The MP from Prince Edward Island, Danny, you must know his name, Sean.
I'm not sure, but I don't know.
Okay, but they've actually got a guy, an MP, who's in charge of the marijuana file. That is so awesome. I've never had anybody in Parliament saying, okay, that's my thing, I'm the marijuana guy. That's awesome. Right? So to me, the most important thing we're going to do is make sure we get that slogan out there. And it's October 19th, 2015. It's Legalization Day. Just show up. Most of the progress in the world is made by the people who just show up. It doesn't matter what endeavor. If you just show up, you might just end up volunteering. And if you volunteer, you might get involved. And you might change history and you might do something. So much of the world is just made up of the achievements of people who just showed up. They heeded the call. They came when it was necessary to come together. And that's what I'm hoping we can do, is that we can really unify and explain to everybody in our movement why it's important to vote. Because our people generally don't even vote. They don't get out and vote. Sensible BC is going to be the most instrumental tool in the next federal election I see for our culture. By the time the next election comes around, you people will be really, really, really organized. Dana is a genius. He's an awesome guy. He's also one of the most likable, wonderful people on earth that I have ever known. And so you will be well led to go into that federal election campaign and really, really make British Columbia go red. I think we have the biggest potential in British Columbia to change a lot of our seats into Liberal seats. And listen, I have never voted for Liberals in my life. And I certainly have never, I cannot recall. My first election campaign was 1968. I remember pounding signs in lawns for Alec Richmond, the NDP candidate that year. But he lost. Liberals swept the country under Pierre Elliott Trudeau that year. And I don't recall having ever voted Liberal since, like it could be 45 years. But I am totally on board, okay? Because anybody who puts their whole reputation on the line, who has to deal with the scurrilous attacks that the Conservatives have thrown at him, the insulting to our culture, going around implying that he's going to make sure kids get, drugs, and I mean, it's terrible what the Conservatives have done. You can go online and see it. Anybody who's a Canadian leader who's had to put up with that to defend our cause for whatever reason he's got, he needs our support.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just absolutely no doubt. And people say, I don't trust him. I'm thinking, what? You trust Harper more? I trust Stephen Harper to be Stephen Harper. That's bad enough. I trust him to be Stephen Harper. Yeah, Thomas Mulcair is probably a better policy one. And Elizabeth May is the most wonderful person. But we've got to choose who's going to form the next government and make pot legal, and that's only one choice, and we've got to make sure we put together take away all our other loyalties. Heck, I'm a libertarian. I don't even believe in any of these people, really, when it gets down to it. But I've got to put my own personal philosophy aside for the better good of the movement. It's us as a movement that's the only thing anybody's going to think about for that next election in this room. I'm sure hoping that's true. I'm putting aside my personal political beliefs, and as I always have. When Jack Layton came to my home in 2003 and made a recording that said he thought marijuana was wonderful and it should be available everywhere legally or without punishment, I thought, right, I'm dropping everything, I'm supporting you. And we did, and he betrayed us. He never brought it up again. He ran away from it. He ended up snubbing me and what have you, and I thought, wow. And we've been lied to before. Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1970 said marijuana was going to be true. We never saw that. Joe Clark said it was going to be decrimmed if he became president. Didn't see anything there. Crutchin said it was going to be a $100 fine. Didn't see anything there. Lies, 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 misleading us, always abusing us, right? So people say, well, why would you trust him now? Because it's never been this clear. Man said legalization. I mean, Pierre Trudeau said, we're going to consider decriminalization, whatever the hell that is, right? But this is legalization. And there's not much interpretation about that word to me, right? And when the party policy says we're going to expunge everybody's criminal records, that's the clean sweep we want to see. And the only other thing is, as Dana and I were talking about yesterday, is that apology. But I'll take the apology later. That's not important compared to stopping people going to jail. And as soon as we get a Liberal majority on October 20th when we all wake up, we've got to insist on a moratorium immediately on all marijuana charges. If you're going to legalize this in 6 to 12 months, then you got to stop all charges right now, because every lawyer is just going to stall until you come up with whatever legal regime you're coming up with, and they're going to drop all those charges. So it's pointless. So we really should have legal marijuana the day after that election. He should go to the government. That if we put our 3 million votes, 3 million people in cannabis culture in this country, that's a guarantee. That is a lock on a Liberal majority. I'm staking a lot of myself on the fact that we can do that, and we will do that. And that essentially is my message. It's probably about 9:45, and I'm going to be here all day, so I look forward to talking with any of you about anything you want to talk about this strategy I have. If I would be interested in anybody who disagrees, because I've never had we've never had this great an opportunity. I've been doing this for 35 years, and it's never, and normally elections where you only have 30, 35 days notice. In the old days, they would just call an election and we had 30 days, and nobody pays any attention to the voter then, right? But we've got a year to hijack this election. We've got a year to hijack. We've got a year to make this election all about us. There's substantially not going to be any issue anyone can vote on that they're going to see a result like we are. We have the most to gain on the next election, and we have to take advantage of that. We have to make it really our election. We've got to show up. So please, on October 19, 2020, please do show up. Vote for the Liberal Party candidate you're riding. And I hope Sensible BC will be calling people and canvassing for this months and months in advance. I know I will try and help fundraise for Sensible BC to do just that. And so thank you very much. And I just want to say, we're also on the cusp of a great worldwide revolution. So not only do we have this chance in Canada, but the world is changing rapidly in ways we've never experienced before, and it's going in our favor. There is more science, more money, more business, more corporatization, for what it's worth, right? And more medicinal marijuana being discovered, everything is going our way, so we've just got to ride this wave, do what we can. Always remember, marijuana won't legalize itself. That's still up to us, but we've got more opportunity and more potential than we've ever had as a movement. And so I thank you for doing what you've done while I was in prison, because it was very inspiring to me, it was very impressive. And again, I have the greatest love for Dana Larson, because he is one of the most amazing people ever. Because I was watching the Secretary of State's website, and I knew before you do that you won. And I said, are you swamped yet? And he goes, well, we don't even know if we won. I said, oh, you definitely won. I've got the website. Yeah. And I said, really? I said, yeah, you won. He said, oh, well, then we'll probably start hearing from the media soon.
It was definitely pretty crazy. I'll talk about Mark here at the end.
And then did you say email?
Mark and Candace Paul.
Right, thank you. So yeah, I'll totally leave it up to you what you want to talk about. Maybe I'll just start out with your name again and then what brings you here. But I want to just see what you have to say.
All right. Well, my name is Marc Emery, and for the last 25 years, I've been kind of waging a campaign, crusade, life's passion, call it what you will, to try and legalize marijuana in Canada, the United States, around the world. In 1990, for example, all books and magazines about marijuana were banned. Bongs and pipes were unknown as things that put everyone out of business, and they were also illegal. There was no medical marijuana, there was no industrial hemp, there was no compassion clubs, there was nothing. There was nothing. You wouldn't have believed it. That's why I'm going to sound like an old person and say today's kids don't know how good you got it. There was nothing. So I, back then, began a campaign of civil disobedience, and by the time I got onto marijuana, the first thing was making books and magazines about marijuana legal again. Because Heist Times was no longer available in newsstands. You couldn't get Jack Berry's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes in Canada. You couldn't get any grow guides. All of it was gone. So we started selling them, and over time we went to court, and we got that part of the law suspended. So by 1994, books and magazines became legal again after a successful court petition. And so we worked on starting the hemp store movement. And I published a guide and explained to people how they could open their own hemp store for $10,000 to $20,000 very cheaply. And that took off like wildfire in 1994, 95. And then we had 60 stores open, selling bungs and pipes, all with this political angle that I had in mind. So then after that, I started selling seeds to raise a lot of money, and I eventually raised enough money to give away $5 million from 1995 to 2005. And then I used money like that to finance ballot initiatives in Washington, D.C. in 1988, and in Colorado from 1991 to 2000, in Arizona, Alaska. We were suing the U.S. federal government. We went to the Canadian Supreme Court in 2003, and I was financing all these things, selling these seeds. So we got, at the same time we're giving away millions of dollars, we're also planting millions of plants all over North America. And my boast on radio was that one man can make so much of a difference that I could have more marijuana created than the entire combined forces of the RCMP and the DEA and the U.S. police forces could possibly destroy in the same period of time. Now, I hope it was true. It's a beautiful thing to think if it is true. But one thing that's for sure is the DEA can't take a lot of notice. Right? I'm giving away all this money for these seed sales and then using it to subvert the process in our favor and then having some success and then beginning to get boastful and telling them that, I'm creating more weed than the combined forces of the empire can possibly destroy. Right? So this was, but so far so good, and then I would go on and smoke a bong or a big 1 ounce joint in all these major centers across Canada in front of the police station in 2003 to challenge the prohibition. So I have actually been arrested 28 times. I've been jailed 23 times. I have tried to get arrested 48, and I've most recently spent a 5-year sentence in the U.S. federal prison.
Catching is a criminal, 'cause he likes